Welcome to the RPG Players Guild. My name is Gordon Jackson. We're going to be talking about races today. The app I'm going to be using here throughout this series of videos is the 5e character app put out by Dungeon Developer, available at the Google Play Store. This app is really good. It has every class, every race, every background, and all the feats that are available in Dungeons & Dragons 5e. You can manage sources when you first get it and download every source book that's in the game so that you have access to all of it in one spot. If your dungeon master just wants to play through the player's handbook, you can select player's handbook only, and you're only going to be looking at races for the player's handbook. Same thing with classes. You're only going to be looking at classes that are available in the standard edition. If your DM wants to play Eberron's Rising from the Last War, and that's the campaign you're going to be playing, and that's where all of your adventures are going to be at, you can come in and all you're going to find is the stuff that's available through that source book. Very good app. So let's get started. Let's talk Aasimar. Oh, I'll tell you. Let me read this is a great race right here, and this is a race that you definitely want to sit down with your dungeon master and really kind of work out your backstory and how you want to play it. There's so much opportunity for you to engage your imagination on this and maybe break outside of the bounds of playing it a little bit different. So let's look at this race. Aasimar bear within their souls the light of the heavens. They are descended from humans with a touch of power from Mount Celestia, the divine realm, and many lawful good deities. Aasimar are born to serve as champions of the gods, their births hailed as blessed events. They are a people of otherworldly visages and luminous features that reveal their celestial heritage. Celestial champions. Aasimar are placed in the world to serve as guardians of law and good. Their patrons expect them to strike at evil, lead by example, and further the cause of justice. From an early age, an Aasimar receives visions and guidance from celestial entities via dreams. These dreams help shape an Aasimar, granting a sense of destiny and a desire for righteousness. Each Aasimar can count a specific celestial agent of the gods as a guide. This entity is typically a diva, I think it's Deva, an angel who acts as a messenger to the mortal world. Excuse me. Hidden wanderers. While Aasimar are strident foes of evil, they typically prefer to keep a low profile. An Aasimar inevitably draws the attention of evil cultists, fiends, and other enemies of good, all of whom would be eager to strike down a celestial champion if they had the chance. When traveling, Aasimar prefer hoods, closed helms, and other gear that allows them to conceal their identities. They nevertheless have no compunction about striking openly at evil. The secrecy they desire is never worth endangering the innocent. Aasimar guides. An Aasimar, except for one who has turned to evil, has a link to an angelic being. That being, usually a deva, provides guidance to the Aasimar through this connection functions only in dreams. Though this connection only functions in dreams. As such, the guidance is not a direct command or a simple spoken word. Instead, the Aasimar receives visions, prophecies, and feelings. The angelic being is far from omniscient. Its guidance is based on its understanding of the tenets of law and good, and it might have insight into combating especially powerful evils that it knows about. As part of the fleshing out of an Aasimar character, consider the nature of that character's angelic guide. The angelic guide tables below offer names and natures that you can use to flesh out your character's guide. So it gives you some opportunity here to work with your DM to establish kind of what kind of visions you get. Conflicting soul. Despite its celestial origin, an Aasimar is mortal and possesses free will. Most Aasimar follow their ordained path, but some grow to see their abilities as a curse. This disaffected Aasimar are typically content to turn away from the world, but a few become agents of evil. In their minds, their exposure to celestial powers amounted to little more than brainwashing. Evil Aasimar make deadly foes. The radiant power they once commanded becomes corrupted into a horrid, draining magic, and their angelic guides abandon them. Even Aasimar wholly dedicated to good sometimes feel torn between two worlds. The angel that guides them sees the world from a distant perch, An Aasimar who wishes to stop and help a town recover from a drought might be told by the angelic guide to push forward on a greater quest. To a distant angel, saving a few commoners might pale in comparison to defeating the cult of Orcus. An Aasimar's guide is wise but not infallible. So we have three different, let's look at the stats on Aasimar. And just reading that flavor text opens up a whole bunch of stuff that you can do in the background. But let's look at what we got here. So the base Aasimar stat, you get a +2 in charisma if you're using Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, where we can modify our origins. We can place that +2 anywhere we'd like if it works out better for us, depending on what class we want to play. And then once you pick either a Fallen, Protector, or Scourge Aasimar, it's also going to give you some pluses in that as well. Size is medium. Speed's 30 feet, so we're right there with humans and half-elves and elves at 30 feet. Age, Aasimar mature at the same rate as humans, but they can live up to 160 years. So you're going to be able to live 60 years longer than the average human. Alignment, imbued with celestial power, most Aasimars are good. Outcast Aasimars are most often neutral or even evil. Size, and I'll come back to alignment. We'll come back to alignment. Size, Aasimar have the same range of height and weight as humans. One of the things I want to point out about Aasimar is that this right here, Aasimars are in Dungeons and Dragons 5e human stock. So there's no dwarf or elf Aasimars. Aasimars come from human stock, so humans are going to be your base race. That's where you came from. It's humans and celestial, whether you were immaculate conception or whether you have a bloodline, or maybe you have a bloodline and somebody in your family was an Aasimar and they died, or an Aasimar. You came from human stock. Dark vision. Blessed with a radiant soul, your vision can easily cut through darkness. You can see in dim light within 60 feet of you, as if it were bright light, and in darkness as if it were dim light. You can't discern color in darkness, only shades of gray. Celestial radiance. You have resistance to necrotic damage and radiant damage. So we have resistance here, and the way that D&D 5e works resistance is as if you're going to take half damage. Healing hands. As an action, you can touch a creature and cause it to regain a number of hit points equal to your level. Once you use this trait, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. That is a big deal right there. Being able to, as a race, being able to lay hands and heal is a big deal in Dungeons and Dragons. Really big. And you can touch a creature, and you are a creature, so you could lay hands on yourself. That's illegal in some states, but it's legal here. Light bearer. You know the light cantrip. Charisma is your spellcasting ability for it. Languages, you can speak, read, and write Common and Celestial. So we have three different subclasses of Aasimar, and I would say that the picture that they show for the stock picture that they show for Aasimar definitely looks more like a fallen Aasimar to me than a protector or a scourge. So let's talk about fallen. So if you're a fallen Aasimar, you're going to get a +1 to an ability score. You could put it in strength. But like I said earlier, if you're using Tasha's Cauldron of Everything's optional rules, you could put that +1 somewhere else. So you're going to get a +2 just for being an Aasimar, and you're going to get a +1 that you can put on some stats. Necrotic Shroud. Starting at 3rd level, you can use your action to unleash the divine energy within yourself, causing your eyes to turn into pools of darkness and 2 skeletal, ghostly, flightless wings to sprout from your back. The instant you transform, other creatures within 10 feet of you that can see you must succeed on a charisma savings throw, DC 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your charisma modifier, or become frightened of you until the end of your next turn. Your transformation lasts for 1 minute or until you end it as a bonus action. During it, once on each of your turns, you can deal extra necrotic damage to one target when you deal damage to it with an attack or a spell. The extra necrotic damage equals your level. Once you use this trait, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. As a protector, you get an ability score plus of +1. Radiant Soul, starting at 3rd level, you can use your actions to unleash the divine energy within yourself, causing your eyes to glimmer and 2 luminous incorporeal wings to sprout from your back. Your transformation lasts for 1 minute or until you end it as a bonus action. During it, you have a flying speed of 30 feet. So you have a flying speed of 30 feet for 1 minute. And once on each of your turns, you can deal extra radiant damage to one target when you deal damage to it with an attack or spell. The extra radiant damage equals your level. Once you use this trait, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. Scourge. Once again, you're going to get a +1 on an ability score. Radiant Consumption. Starting at 3rd level, you can use your action to unleash the divine energy within yourself, causing a searing light to radiate from you, pour out of your eyes and mouth, and threaten to char you. Your transformation lasts for 1 minute or until you end it as a bonus action. During it, you shed bright light in a 10-foot radius and dim light for an additional 10 feet. At the end of each of your turns, you, and each creature within the 10 feet of you take radiant damage equal to half your level, rounded up. In addition, once on each of your turns, you can deal extra radiant damage to one target when you deal damage to it with an attack or spell. The extra radiant damage equals your level. Once you use this trait, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. One of the things on here, let's talk about this you. So at the end of each of your turns, you and each creature within 10 feet of you take radiant damage equal to half your level rounded up. So if you were 10th level, we divide that by 2, we're going to end up with 5 damage. You are going to have resistance to this, so you would take half of that. And I believe if you have resistance, it's half of it rounded down. So you're going to take 2, possibly 3 damage. So you will take damage when you do that. Damaging yourself, but damaging everybody that's in that 10-foot range around you. I'm really, like with any of these races, I like to go, let's check out some images so that we can get an idea of what we want to play. Something that matches with our concept of what our character would be. Whether we want to play, in the past, before Tasha's, like, you'll see a lot of stuff online about different races, and they'll say, hey, this race is really good to play with this class. And a lot of that in the past was based off of the bonuses that you got for your ability scores. But with Tasha's Cauldron of Everything's optional rules, where we can put those bonuses where we want them for our concept of our character, it's going to open up the ability. You can play any class with this. Some classes are going to be better because of stuff that you get down the road. Like if you're in the divine, thinking of some of the barbarian subclasses, or on the cleric side. And it'll also depend a lot on who your celestial is, like what god is it. Maybe you're a cleric and you're in the forge domain because Hephaestus is the god that you come from, or some type of god in that range. But looking at images on here, trying to get an idea of what your character would look like and how they would, once you find something that kind of matches your idea of it, sitting down and working with your DM. And I really think that this is one of those character races that when you work with your DM, it's a private thing between you and your DM, like what your group knows about you versus what you and your DM know about you. It's up to you to divulge all that information to the group, and how the dynamic of having you in the group affects the group. So your diva, and it talked about it in the flavor text, they're from afar and they're looking down, and you're trying to save these 40 villagers because they're in that drought, but your patron is trying to get you to move on. We don't have time for this. We need to go here and get this done. If you stay and you go, hey, I've got to help these people, how does that affect your are you the type that you exert free will and you go, look, I know that you want me to go do this, but I can't as an individual abandon these people? What kind of effects is that going to have? Is it that your guide holds that against you, and you end up eventually losing your guide and falling? Or is it one of those things where your guide knows? I mean, they're celestial. They know. They know that you're going to do this, but they also know that in doing that, that your next task becomes tougher. Or maybe you save that village, and when you get to the spot where you were on your next, where you were supposed to go, you got there late, and now there was repercussions. Maybe that village got burnt to the ground because you weren't there to protect it. So there's stuff that you can do when you're playing these characters. Also, when you're thinking about think about it as a child or as a young adult. Maybe your family has a history of this. How did you find out you were in Aasimar? Was it something that they knew right off the bat? How does it affect those around you? Like maybe you were sought out, and maybe you got found when you were young by the church, and they protected you. And so you had you've got a bright and shiny outlook. You're the bright, shiny penny. But maybe you were in that village where when you were 12 years old, you saw your first vision, and it showed a child in town dying. And so you went to your parents and told them, hey, this is what happened. And they went and warned that family. So they pulled the child out. The mother pulls the child out and runs out into the street. And just at that time, a wagoneer loses control of the reins, and his horses run down the street and run over the mother and the child. And the mother survives, but the child died. If you hadn't said anything, or your parents hadn't said anything, the child would have been in the house. They would have never gotten ran over. So how does that affect, like now everybody blames you or blames your family? Maybe they kicked them out of the village. There are so many different things that you can think of when you're playing this type of character and this race, working with your DM on how you view the world. Also, when you think about gods, like the god of death is lawful neutral. The god of death has no skin in the game. They just have a job to do. They're extremely lawful. Maybe you are a fallen, but you're a fallen for the god of death. And the deal there is that there are liches and vampires and beings that have escaped and not been able to go through the judgment of death. And death, your main focus is going after those groups. So even though people look at you as fallen and they may think of you as evil, you're not really evil. You're an instrument of law. And how that affects it. There's all kinds of things that you could do with your DM on this. One of the things, I got this video right here. I want to show this right here. This is a prime example.
I'd ask you to sit down, but you're not going to anyway. And don't worry about the vase.
What vase?
That vase.
I'm sorry.
I said don't worry about it. I'll get one of my kids to fix it.
How did you know?
Oh, what's really going to bake your noodle later on is, would you still have broken it if I hadn't said anything?
That right there is a prime example of when you get prophecies or somebody's giving you information like that and you interpret it. That right there is perfect Aasimar. So whenever you've got some celestial giving you information, or you're getting prophecies, or you're getting visions, and how you interpret them, this is a great character race where I can see you having tons of fun with it. But this is absolutely like working with your DM and really trying to get down into like how you're going to play it. And just because I think like playing it not necessarily outside the rules, we want to play within the rules, but like playing a fallen, I don't necessarily see that. Maybe you are playing a fallen who has actually gone to the dark side. You've played a fallen and you've gotten so tired of it that you've made a pact with some other entity and you went warlock, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna hunt Aasimars. And there are so many different things that you could do with it, to think outside the box a little bit, staying within the rules as written as far as the stats and how we want to play them, but how your character interacts with what's around you could be a very big deal. And it really affects the group that you're playing with, because if you are a protector or a scourge Aasimar, or even a Fallen, you're going to have people that are hunting them. That's what they're after. We don't live in a vacuum, and Dungeons and Dragons, different than the real world that we live in day to day, has magic. And so wherever there's magic, there's going to be people that want more power. And looking at you with your celestial upbringing as a source of power that they could tap into or use or sacrifice, people are going to be looking for you. You're not always going to, that's why, in the flavor text it says they travel around hooded and they wear masks so that people don't see them. They try and hide that lineage so that they're not drawing attention to themselves. But as a group, that's one of the things that the group takes on, is that, this person's in the group and they serve this function within the group and they're part of our band of heroes. But on the flip side, there are times where we have to stop and we have to do stuff just because of that. I think this is a great race to play. I can see people having a ton of fun with it, but this is absolutely, with any of these races, working on your history or working on that stuff so that you have a really good idea. And when you first start off, some of that stuff might be vague. As a DM, I like to keep some of it vague. We have a pretty close idea of what we want to do, but it gives the DM the opportunity to add on to that and build up your backstory a little bit and work that into the group. All right, that was Aasimar. Hopefully everybody likes the video. If you like the channel, please hit subscribe. If you like the video, please hit like. If you have any comments, I like to use my imagination when I'm thinking of these races and really try and work the bigger picture. If you're playing a lot of one-offs or short campaigns where you're going to roll up characters regularly and you're only playing a little bit, it's not as big a deal. But if you're playing in the longer campaign with a group of friends where you may play for months or years, having that information can really affect what goes on with the campaigns. And the more of that you have, the more your DM can involve the group and the group is involved together. All right. Thanks for watching.